The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen. We're tracking developing news from overnight. A motorcyclist was killed on the freeway in Weldon. It happened around 9 p.m. on State Route 178 near the Kelso Creek Road exit. At some point, the motorcyclist collided with a pickup truck. We've reached out to CHP, but we have no word yet on the details of this investigation. Well, fire crews were put to work in central Bakersfield over the weekend. Flames broke out at a vacant home on Q Street Saturday night. This is just less than a block north from the train tracks. Crews were able to stop the fire before it spread to another unit. Firefighters say no one was hurt by the fire or displaced. We'll tell you, we are still looking into how it started. Your time now is 5:03, and crews were also extinguishing a fire yesterday morning in North Bakersfield. This is at an open field near Golden State Avenue and F Street. One of our viewers, Brandon Barraza, sent us this video. You can see white smoke billowing into the sky as firefighters douse the flames. The blaze lasted about 30 minutes. No word on what sparked it. Well, following up now on a battle between House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Biden. $13 billion in unspent COVID relief funds are on the chopping block in the ongoing debt ceiling standoff. That funding was set aside to help Americans during the pandemic, but about $50 billion went unused. Biden has said recouping the unspent money is on the table in budget talks. The two leaders now face a crucial week. Can they negotiate to keep America from defaulting on its bills? NBC's Chris Pallone is on Capitol Hill with details on a very important week coming up.
The debt meeting.
During a break in his Sunday afternoon bike ride, President Biden said he's confident Democrats and Republicans will be able to resolve a debt limit crisis before the nation plunges into default.
I really think there's a desire on their part as well as ours to reach agreement. I think we'll be able to do it.
The Treasury says the nation could run out of money to pay past expenses as early as June 1st. Republicans want budget cuts as a condition to raise the limit.
We were reasonable, say we're willing to raise the debt ceiling, but we want meaningful spending cuts and capping spending at 2022 levels.
But some Democrats accuse GOP hardliners of holding the U.S. economy hostage to get their way.
The president has been clear that he is prepared to begin a separate discussion about budget and spending priorities, but not under the threat of default.
Defaulting on the debt would be catastrophic. It would send a chain of reaction of events across the country that would really freeze everything up. It would be terrible.
While the debt limit deadline is on the horizon, the White House continues to deal with the fallout from last week's shift in immigration policy. Thousands of migrants flooded border towns ahead of the end of a key pandemic-era rule. Now lawmakers will see if there's any appetite on Capitol Hill to enact real immigration reform in its wake.
When it comes to negotiations with the Democrats on this policy, I say to them very clearly, let's secure the border first. Let's get it done.
Since Rule 42 ended, the number of migrants caught crossing the border dropped more than 50% from earlier in the week. President Biden is scheduled to go to Asia for the G7 summit on Wednesday. He says he still plans to go even if there's no debt limit deal in place. Aides will continue to negotiate in his absence. In Washington, Chris Pallone, NBC News.
In the wake of Title 42 expiring, volunteers in San Diego have created phone charging stations for migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. Along with basic necessities like food and water, cell phones are a lifeline for migrants. They need them to apply for asylum on the Customs and Border Patrol One mobile app and to keep in touch with family and friends.
This is probably one of the most crucial services, charging their phones. Besides food and water, without their phones, they can't contact their families and let them know that they're safe and well. So, yeah, this is crucial.
In just one day, organizers say they charged over 100 phones. Organizers say they plan on being at the border to charge migrants' phones as long as they can. We'll have an in-depth look at the country's migrant situation coming up this morning at 5:30. All right, new reporting this morning about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the major step he's taking toward a run for president. It comes as he visits Iowa amid a new surge in support there. Dasha Burns reports.
Looking every bit the presidential candidate.
We must reject the culture of losing that has infected our party in recent years. The time for excuses is over.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis still isn't one. yet.
So great to be in Iowa.
But NBC News has learned DeSantis is likely to make his intentions official by the end of the month. In fact, he'll have to. On Monday, his political staff is set to move into a new base of operations, according to two sources. That move will cost enough money to trigger disclosure requirements and the need to file candidacy paperwork with federal election officials within 15 days. And while DeSantis has been coy about the timing for an official announcement, he's been vocal elsewhere, weighing in on the controversial case of the choking death of Jordan Neely, tweeting support for Daniel Penny, the former Marine charged with second-degree manslaughter, who says his actions were in self-defense. DeSantis' stop in Iowa came with the wind at his back. A super PAC supporting the governor announcing the endorsement of 37 Iowa Republican state lawmakers, more than a third of the state legislature's total.
These are the folks that are out there knocking doors, talking to supporters.
Key help in the state that's traditionally where voters are first to weigh in on the race for the Republican nomination.
It's the most important state in the country. We get to decide who comes out of this state and who is the front runner to become the next president.
And while former President Trump dominates the national polls for his party's nomination, Iowa caucus goers are known for careful deliberation.
Number one in the nation, so we want to see them and meet them.
I really like Governor DeSantis. I think he's got a chance to win it nationally.
Former President Trump also had an Iowa visit planned, but he had to cancel his rally because of a tornado watch. But whether it's been on the trail or in campaign videos, he's been taking direct aim at Governor DeSantis lately, who just may become Mr. Trump's top rival in this race. This could be the week that the case goes to the jury in the murder trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West, accused of killing their two adopted boys months before reporting them missing. Orrin and Orson were just 3 and 4 years old when they were reported missing in December of 2020. Among the prosecution's witnesses, several adults who had not seen the boys for months prior to December. The West's oldest biological child testified as well, saying he saw his little brother's dead body. The defense disputed his story, however, bringing in a doctor to talk about coercive interview techniques used on children. Closing arguments are scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. While thousands of migrants are still coming across the border each day, the number of people crossing has dramatically dropped. About 11,000 migrants were apprehended on Wednesday. Saturday, it was just 4,000. And now, as those who've entered the U.S. make their way to cities further north, some are declaring states of emergencies to deal with the influx. George Solis reports.
Tales of pain and suffering along the U.S.-Mexico border. She said the journey was particularly hard for her 7-year-old daughter, who ended up with an infection. Migrants lining the streets of border towns like here in El Paso. It's where we meet Evelyn and Franklin, who made a perilous 3-month journey to the U.S. from Peru. She says in Nicaragua, they were kidnapped and they were threatened. And still, that pales in comparison to the trauma she says she felt when she was separated from her 4-year-old grandson at the border. They took the child and told us he would be remanded into state custody, he says, now left waiting to see if they'll be reunited. Since Title 42 was lifted on Thursday, border crossings have dramatically decreased, largely because of stricter migration policies by the Biden administration.
Not only have we been planning, but we have been executing on those plans.
Migrants must first secure appointments on an app before entering a port of entry. Those that cross illegally could be barred from seeking asylum for 5 years. As migrants are shipped north, a humanitarian crisis is brewing in sanctuary cities across the country. In New York, the historic Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan is being transformed into an asylum seeker arrival center.
We've reached a breaking point. We need help.
In Chicago, warehouses are preparing to house migrants. And in Denver, this parking lot served as a makeshift shelter. Bells ringing and flowers being given out on the border. A moment to celebrate the mothers. 22-year-old Yorlena Falcon gave birth to her son just 15 days ago.
Just at one point she thought she had lost her baby when she actually tripped on the journey.
As this mother is left wondering why her 17-year-old son died in U.S. immigration custody earlier this week.
Él iba sano, él iba bien.
He was healthy and doing well, she says. Families in search of a better life, now caught in the middle of policy and politics.
Turning to our coverage of the Sierra snowmelt, Corcoran State Prison has stopped accepting inmates due to concerns over flooding and possible evacuations. As the sinking Corcoran levee is being raised and fortified, the potential floodwaters reaching those prisons south of Corcoran remains a growing concern. Leaders say prison officials have developed a plan to move prisoners if needed. The prisons house about 8,000 inmates. In the state's revised budget, Governor Gavin Newsom included a plan to cover the $32 billion deficit for our state. His plan would cut spending by about $10.6 billion. The rest would come from a combination of borrowing and delaying some spending while shifting other expenses to different sources. Newsom's plan would balance the budget this year, but it would leave the state with a $5 billion deficit next year. The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.